What is your story? Matthew and I were very privileged to attend the conference in England at the Harrow on the Hill. What an amazing school. And the topic was tradition, leadership, and innovation. And part of that was that we recognized that the teacher is actually the main resource for education in our country. And that might sound obvious, but maybe not so in some areas. And what are we going to do today is actually focusing on not physically writing, but metaphorically writing your own story. And how every student in your class, every teacher, every person is actually at the moment in the process of writing their very own story as we are sitting here now. And we all keep on their different chapters in one's life and different journeys that one goes through, and we experiencing that as we stand here today, or sit here today. And each of these stories is, of course, totally unique and special. All right? So let's see. Let's keep moving.
Our stories begin right here, and we never write them alone. Sometimes we write them with someone who puts our story first. Other times with someone who puts their own story first. There'll be pages we love to read again and again, and some we'll barely remember. Sometimes we feel like the hero of our story, and other times, not. There are stories of dreamers, stories of creators, stories of strivers, stories of believers, and we're inspired by them all. That's why we invite you to write your story with us. Your story matters.
Right, so we're all very excited now because unlike the English teachers, we all love writing, not. Normally, when one goes about writing, there's a certain procedure you would follow, a writing process. We're not going to be doing that, but we'll be planning, we'll be researching, we'll be organizing, drafting and designing, revising and proofreading, and doing some of that over and over and over again. I just think of Mr. Rob Guttridge now, I think of Mrs. Jews going through 270 testimonials. Mrs. Finney's also helped with that. I've done those. Thank you to everyone who has done those testimonials. I must say that they were probably the best I've seen. And some might say, well, thank you for AI. There's nothing wrong with using AI, just making sure that we try to be unique and special in the comments that we make about each of our learners in our care. Your story matters. And when writing these stories, one would not necessarily follow the normal writing process as indicated on the screen. And the stories may well be a bit rough and ready around the edges, but they are the stories nevertheless. Mr. Solomon, there are lots of chairs down the front here. Don't be shy. That's what happens when you come late. You sit in the front and you answer all the questions. Oh, you're lucky you got one there. Never mind. During the July holidays, as I said, we attended this conference, Matthew and I, along with a number of other colleagues from South Africa. And one of the keynote speakers was an amazing lady. Her name is Jazz Ample Farm. And I think Matthew and I were very blessed to have this dynamic woman speak to us. She was just unbelievable. She's CEO of Human First. Notice that, Human First. And she helps leaders who want to influence. We do that every day, hopefully. Inspire. I'm talking about your learners in your class, and maybe those of you at management level and higher, and motivate their teams with greater engagement to grow their experiences and leave a lifelong legacy. You will, no doubt, I'm sure, remember teachers in your life who have made a massive impact on you. Hopefully it's been a positive one. Maybe not in all cases. I can think of some of the teachers I had who I'd probably want to physically assault. I probably deserved a lot of what I got from them over the years. And those that have influenced you and directed where you've gone in your lives. It's quite incredible, actually. And remember them and are blessed to have had them in your life for some period of time. I look at myself and I think of my love for reading started in about standard 2, 3, and 4, where we didn't have TV in those days. We had to go to the cinema with a bioscope, depending where you lived. And that was our form of entertainment apart from reading. And the love for reading started then. You know, at the end of the day, those last 15 minutes, we'd read should be reading, he or she would read a novel to us, Willard Price or Enid Blyton or one of those authors, well known in those days. And then J.Z. Chase, of course, which was Burton, that we read it. And the guy who did the westerns, Louis L'Amour. Never read a western, I don't know why, but I used to enjoy the spaghetti westerns. I'm sure we all saw many of them over the years. You know, someone who gets shot 25 times and there was never a bullet hole or anything, but they certainly died very dramatic deaths. My point I'm trying to make to you is that there, in that instance, was my love for reading and also my love for drama started back then already. And I suppose in between all that is English. Never mind the sport and all other things that goes on. But going back to jazz, she was so personal, and we're going to look at one or two of her clips and tell her story and ask that we, as educators, be courageous. That doesn't mean you go stand up in front of the class and tell them all your gory details. But what is important is that they know that you care about them and that you are also a human being. You're also dealing with your issues. You also have your parents of children, grandparents, or whatever the case might be. And I think that was very important. And she emphasized being authentic. And also a sense of humor is very important. Those of us who have teenage boys, it was a while ago in my case, but teenage grandsons, when we do the sessions with them, we always ask them, what are the things you'd like your dad to do? One of them is laugh more, have a sense of humor. Interesting point. Mention they say dads, not so much moms. I don't know why that, but never mind. Moms will know the answer to that one. So going back to jazz, well, she was profound, and certainly her message was very powerful and authentic, as I said, and unique. So once again, she asked us as educators, because she was addressing 750 or more educators from around the world, to be brave. And yes, we can all relate to having to be brave. That first day in a new job, in a new position, that first grade 9 class that you have, dealing with them pushing your buttons. I'm going back many years for Mr. Sutherland. I don't know if he's gone home. Is he here? He's missing, obviously feels he doesn't need PD anymore. But we will remember the days of the old cane. You know, the cane seemed to resolve everything, but maybe not so. For some boys, it never really helped in the end. So I want to share the following excerpt with you from the recent conference, where she focused on that impact that we have as educators in enabling our pupils to tell their stories, to be themselves. And they're so influenced by so many things outside their actual immediate world that they get a distorted opinion or vision of what the real world is all about. And we don't want to be negative now, but you talk to Ralph Patterson about some of the issues we're dealing with some of the boys. And I'm not getting the necessary moral guidance that they possibly need. So let's have a look at that.
The phrase goes, human first, professional second. Because what I want to talk about is you, the impact you have, the difference you make, and that's why I always start with this, the stories we tell. We hear a lot about toxic masculinity and sexism and misogyny. Where's the compelling story? What's the alternative? Because what happens in education, what happens in these halls, in these schools, in these rooms, are young men being grown into leaders. And in that cycle, continuing and growing other young men into leaders. And we all play a part in that. We all have a role to play. So here's my question to you. What's your story? In fact, we're all telling 4 stories at any one time in this room right now. The first story is the story that you tell everyone about yourself. You don't mind people knowing, it's just what you tell them. So you probably tell people you're related to Brad Pitt because of the striking resemblance you bear. Stuff you can get away with. The second story, that's the story that other people tell about you. So who grew up with an older sibling, older brother or sister? All lives, aren't they? Stories they tell. Who has the honour of living with children? Who has their own children, small or big? Yeah. What story are they going to tell about your parenting? Start making a little bit of sick come up in the back of your throat. Yeah, me too, me too. And the thing is about that story is we can't control what other people say about us. We could show up with our full fat self and be honourable, we can have integrity, but ultimately the story that others tell about us is down to their perception. That's why story number 3 is so important. Story number 3 is the story that you tell yourself about yourself. So it's the pep talk you give yourself in the morning. You know, when you're getting ready to leave the house, you look in the mirror one last time, give yourself that little talk to give you a bit of vim for the day. It goes a little something like this. Oh, you're fat, you're old, you're going grey. Let's go. You know, with the things we say to ourselves, we wouldn't say that to anyone else. We'd never greet anyone with a, well, you look rough. We'd never do that. I mean, jokingly. But we reserve this special kind of critique for ourselves. And here's my problem with that. Story 1, story 2, story 3, they're out of whack. There's no agreement. It's really important that we get these stories on the same plane, that what other people say about you, you own, especially when it's good. That's where story number 4 comes into play. Story number 4, super exciting. It's the unwritten story. It's a story that hasn't been written yet, but the pen is in your hand. Your story can be different at the end of this conference to the one you came with. You will have a new, a more compelling story to go back to your schools and tell. Also, it's not just your story, is it, number 4? You get to write, you get to contribute, you get to leave a legacy in the stories of the young mini-humans that you work with day in, day out. That is amazing. So what's your story? What story are you telling? How do you want that story to be different? I'll go first. My story is I'm a speaker, no surprise there. That's my number 1 bucket. I go all over the world, I speak on big stages, small stages. The first time I was flown to the US to speak, I spoke in California, in this huge auditorium. It was on the beach, it was beautiful, there was lots of very nice things going on in the hotel. And when I stood backstage,
she freezes at that point because you actually get quite nervous. So a point that she's trying to make there actually is that we've all, I'm repeating myself, and I think that's important that we are aware of that every single one of our boys, every single one is busy writing their story as we speak. But she says the following also, you might have seen that in the background, you're only as powerful as the stories you tell. Right? You're only as powerful as the stories you tell. I'm not going to say anything more about that. So just to elaborate a little bit further, this is always one of the questions I ask the boys when I see the second formers. Who am I? That's a big question. Maybe there's some of us at the moment who don't know who you are. I'm not talking about my name's Christopher John Newman, I'm 64, I'm about to retire. Hello, young. You know, that's just my story. No. Who are you? What do you stand for? What are your morals? What are your beliefs? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? Where do you come from? So if you meet people from overseas, from some of the tribal backgrounds. I can talk about New Zealand. Whenever I meet someone for the first time, I say, hi, how are you? If it's a male, I say, what school did you go to? It's a crazy thing to say, what does that got to do with it? What school did you go to? And a few months ago, we got a gentleman to come and speak here. And their dads and lads evening. And the reason why I asked him to come and speak is because he said, I've been in 9 schools. 9 schools. Why? And of course, that's where the discussion started. I was in one school for 12 years. Technically, primary school and high school on the same campus. What a pleasure. My parents didn't move all around the world or the country. And those are how things were. So to actually, we used to do a photograph, I'm not sure we're selling this at the moment. Matthew, did we not do a photograph of boys? No, we don't. We're getting mixed up with another school. At Weinberg, they do a photograph of the boys who've been there from suburb all the way to Matric. Ours, of course, is only high school. But that in itself is unique and special. Because as you know, to move, my poor wife and I have moved 12 times. I say my poor wife because she does all of the packing. I'm not there. Can you imagine? Yeah, 12 times. Just to move once is traumatic enough. To move our children from one school to another is traumatic. To move just from primary school to high school is stressful. All right? And if you're part of the Murchison crowd, there's 80 or 90 of them. So that's cool. Our kids come from 84 different schools, I think, roughly. And that's quite a big thing. You know in your own years, and you start new in a new place. It's daunting. Teaching our lovely I sort of pick on the third formers all the time. But to be fair, about 2 years ago, our second formers were the worst. Our current fourth formers were the worst behaved in the history of the school ever. They had the most punishments, and you have to ask yourself, why? You reflect back, COVID, 2 years, parenting maybe was not what it should be. They were hardly at school. Our second formers 3 years ago, were hardly at school. They only came in May. They were here in March and they left. They only came back much later. So who am I? A very, very big question to be answered for the boys as well. And as you know, as they go through teenagehood, they're trying to find out who they are. And it's tricky at the moment. And then secondly, once they know who they are, or think they know who they are, is what is my story? And ladies and gentlemen, if we sit here, and Lauren, I'm not sure if Lauren's here. No? There she is. Hi, Lauren. I don't know how Lauren does her job. I mean that sincerely. How any psychologist or counselor or whatever. Because even the boys in our school, I shouldn't say even, many of our boys in our school are going through major issues of trauma as we sit here. So it is quite exhausting and stressful, and we try and help them as much as we can. So just to reiterate what Jazz said, the story you tell everyone about yourself, right? That might be a very different story. Are you happy to be your authentic self? To be who you are, to stand for what you believe in? It's not easy. It's quite easy to go with the flow, right? And the same with the boys, all right? Safer to be part of the group that's the in group. You don't get noticed. If you ask the kid, probably what's the best year at high school, probably fourth form. Why would that be? Because no one really worries about fourth formers, do they? They're sort of just, they're not that irritating third former anymore. They're starting to grow up. They found the right subjects, hopefully. They're not doing all the other ones they don't need to do. And then the next question, the story other people tell about you. All right? And you know, when we do the 360 reviews every year, people are very sensitive, myself included, you know, and you see these comments that come through. Sometimes they're negative, and you've got to look at it and say, well, does it apply to me or doesn't it apply to me? And if it's honest and it's honest feedback, well, then you must take it on the chin and look, be aware of this and move forward. Next one. This, any top sportsman, if I look at my directors of sport now, they'll tell you this. The story that you tell yourself about yourself is so important. That self-talk, that self-monologue that you have with yourself every day, your drive to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 or 6, whatever that time is, and to take on the tasks of the day. Those very good sportsmen, batsmen in cricket, for example, self-visualization. Where's that? If I get a bouncer, what am I going to do? You know, I can deal with a bouncer, I can't deal with this. The word can't should not exist in your vocabulary. All right? You have to believe you can. And you boys have to have dreams. They have to. All right? They have to believe that there's something waiting for them. One of the boys finished yesterday, great excitement, drove out the road and had an accident. Luckily, he wasn't injured. I don't know whose car it was, but it was a fancy Volvo, I think. Mom would have been charged. But at least he was safe. He was safe. So, the story that you tell yourself about yourself, very important. The interior monologue, going into English domain, but it's very, very, very important. And then, of course, the next one is the story that hasn't been written as yet. And we go through these different periods in our lives, seasons of your life, if you like, you know, and what lies ahead, and the journey of life. We talk about our boys going through their good man journey. They start here as school and then they go to third form and they get a little difficult at times. Fourth form, they start finding themselves, hopefully. Fifth form, they're pushing themselves forward as leaders. And then sixth form is hopefully, they're all leaders, and hopefully they lead, which is a very tough ask of young teenage boys of 17, 18 years of age. And we need to continue to help them. So, that's part of the process in writing your own story. We need to know who we are, what we stand for, and that is something that adults and students battle with for many years, and it's not going to go away. But none so much as the teenage years, because of all the outside influences. And we have had boys, top class boys, make 1 second, I call it 1 second of madness, particularly when I first started here, it was 30 seconds of madness. Now it's 1. Why do I say 1? Because you post that post that you shouldn't post and it's too late. And we had one boy do that early this year, deputy head in a badge, which is not pleasant. Alright? Dare I say the pissing in the pit saga was not a 1 second of madness, because that was planned. That's probably longer than 30 seconds of stupidity. And the consequence, we actually emailed this morning of a boy, I won't mention his name, who was a deputy head, not involved in that incident, but in another incident. And parents took us to court on the basis that we badged him as a deputy head. And that matter's only just finished now 2 years later, and they have the cost to pay because their little Schnuffelbook was no longer a deputy. They felt really bad for him. I'm being sarcastic now because I think it's absolutely disgusting. So there you go. So we are on our way, they are on their way in dealing with everything that happens on a daily basis and finding one's true identity, one's authentic self.
Today, I want to tell you the true story behind The Apprentice. And it's the story of what happens when people just like you stand when a hero is needed. And growing up, I was one little girl that needed a hero. It took one woman and a handful of guys to create this family. You can all tell which one I am, yeah? They're like the good-looking one. And this is the only photo I have of all of us together, because when I was 8 years old, we were separated and put into care. By 8 years old, I'd been punched in the face. By 8 years old, I'd been forced to steal so I could eat. And by 8 years old, I'd been raped countless times. if it feels like I'm telling your story, I want you to know it's okay. You're safe with what I'm about to say because you know, and I know, that the real journey is repairing the damage to our sense of self. But I want to share this with you because I want to show you what's possible. And I mean what's possible from the point of view of a broken little girl who believes that she is completely worthless. Because this little girl went to school. And school meant everything to me. Everything. School is where I laughed. Specifically, I laughed at a teacher called Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams was under the impression that he was in charge of our class, which made it very difficult for us to get on. And he used to have this moustache, and he used to shout, and his moustache would dance, "I'm absolutely furious!" Now, like others, Mr. Williams asked me about my bruises, and I did what I always did and lied. But he leant into me, and he said, "I think you're protecting someone. And what you need to know is that I'm here to protect you."
Sure. Sorry, I get a bit emotional with that one. It's quite hectic. So there she is. There was someone who actually took her care, some care. She's 8 years old. I mean, goodness gracious me. And there was one teacher who actually paid her some attention and actually followed through on it.
And in South Africa, let's just leave it there, it's probably 10 times worse. All right? In the rural areas, I will never forget. The first day I started the other boy down in the pool. And it wasn't, how many of you were there when I started? There's only a few more to get rid of. Yeah. And fortuitously, it sounds terrible, it was not one of our kids. And the pool didn't have that huge fence around it at the time. Just had a little gate, remember? You could just imagine 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds walking in there.
I come from New Zealand, which is, I'm going to use the word anal as far as anything goes about social security for kids, which it should be, really. And luckily I had a wealth of knowledge around me of educators, headmasters who've been doing their job for a number of years. And I remember someone coming, I don't know it was you, coming up, we were watching rugby. It was a rugby festival, 150.
They said, "Can we see you? Boys are down in the pool."
I was horrified. Graham Bennett,
Not horrified.
and the proverbial hit the fan, and we had to react immediately. And it was a boy who was part of the development side.
And cut a long story short,
The department was very worried about being sued, etc., etc., etc. But we did everything we could do and did it right. And I remember the big fuss by the department. But 3 months later, one of our boys, top basketball boys, was shot dead protecting his parents. And not his parents, his mother and his sister. And that was also horrific. And now let me just go back a step. Sorry. It's very important that you understand what I'm telling you now. When I contacted the headmaster of that school, the boy who died, I said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Newman." And we did all the things necessary, food, blankets, etc. And I just said to him, "Look, I'm so sorry," and all this sort of thing. He just said, "No, thank you. You must understand that we deal with this sort of thing
quite regularly.
What have I come back to? One person dies in New Zealand in the year, and it's a major catastrophe. I'm not being facetious. I say that. So anyway, then this young fella dies, slow and horrible, and there was nothing from the department. They couldn't give a hoot. I said, "Ma'am, what, no, Mr. Newman, you need to deal with it. Is there any counselling or anything with the boys? No, you need to sort that out." It's all. I was horrified. So, because there was a fear of litigation, then there was a big panic. But because this boy was now shot down the road, and then we had a third boy who's still alive today, thank God. It's a Monday. And the rugby guys don't know who he is. He's actually worked here and he's coached. And his girlfriend was murdered. And he was shot, but it was off a ricochet. Hit something, went through him into his back cap. And he ended up in the local hospital. Don't go there. So I went there, I was absolutely horrified. He survived. And then I thought, well, this is Africa. You know, this is why you came back to this place because you love it. And it is. But these sorts of things happen every single day. And you look at what happens in the Western Cape, in the Cape Flats, there are tens of people being killed every week in gang warfare. It is horrendous, all right? So these are, what she's saying is happening here all the time, okay? And we have a responsibility to try and help these young kids. I've taught in the primary school before. How many of you have taught in the primary school? It's actually quite nice, isn't it? Lovely presents, eh? They still get presents. I used to love it. There's be a whole table full of presents. High school, so don't tell anybody about it. I didn't give it to you. But I tell you what, I'm digressing now. The most wonderful present is, Matthew and I got one the other day, is the card from a boy to say thank you. You agree? Never mind the holiday to Mauritius, that's not important. The fact that he took the time personally to write a card was for me very special. So there, once again, that teacher was her hero. Professor Janssen tells the same story. He wasn't great, but he tells a story of no one caring about him. And then the art teacher actually said, well, okay, you can come into my art class. He was too useless to do anything else. He's pretty good at the moment, rubbing people up the wrong way, but never mind. I think he enjoys doing that.
Every day I work with teachers who, they're crushed by our education system and they think that they're just ordinary and not brilliant. And it, you know, it breaks my heart because that those heroes make a difference. And if you know that in your schools and in your workplaces, your friends, your family, this is their story. It's not just my story. The details might be different, but the struggle is the same. It's anyone's story who is afraid they might just be unlovable. And in their story, you're the hero. The hero is you. So go be a hero. And it doesn't matter if you don't feel ready, and it is totally okay if you're scared, but do it anyway. Because when you do, you can literally transform a life. Thank you.
There you have it. So true, so true.
My story of Maya Traversed. If I tell my story when no one is willing to hear, who takes the glory and who holds it dear? My story is my mind, into the world of a ghost, a book that I really forgot to find, a writer who can't write what she needs to most. Writing is a lot like talking, but simply not loud, or walking away from the crowd. My story is mine, I write it day and night, line by line, from morning to midnight. For it is my story, I write it every second, minute, and hour, a record of my memories, both sweet and sour.
So back to where we were at the beginning. So what is your story? The story you're telling yourself, the story you're talking to other people, that other people are saying about you. That interior monologue, there's get up and go, we've only got 3 more days to go, thank you. Jesus, and I'm not being facetious when I say that, hallelujah, holiday begins. Everyone has that. And we all have had our own trials and tribulations, and we've had to overcome those so that we can be strong for other people. Not easy, not easy. And I often say to you that look after number 1, and that's you, so that you can be strong for those around you. And thank you for doing that. And the impact that you have, even if you think it's only that much, those boys will remember you for many, many years to come. I can tell you a funny story if you like at this stage. You know, when we, during the 80s and 90s, we came, 70s, I got hidings, it was terrible. Some of them never recovered, that's why I've got a permanent twitch. Not, but an absolutely true story, absolutely 100% true story. In my old school, Mine Boys High, we didn't have any females. Mr. Blackbeard, just the name's enough to make you petrified. I was instead at 7B. Anyway, I sat in the front because I was a very dutiful student, obedient, and the teacher we had in 7B ran away. But karma has a way of dealing with things, doesn't it? And we got a headmaster's wife from Jan van Riebeck School in Cape Town to come and help out, take us. At the other moment, there was a librarian, and she was a lesbian. Not that that's important, but we were petrified of her, so no one went to the library. And then there was this all stereotypical, and I apologize, remember this is 14-year-old teenagers. And then there was an art teacher that all the young male staff were very keen on, and of course the teenage boys were quite keen as well. In fact, so keen that a Saturday night boy went and she ran off and eloped, and they got married and had 3 children. So things can happen. Love is blind, they say. But never there's cutting to the chase. In those days, the headmaster controlled everything. And this is, I can't remember her surname now. She ran out of chalk and said, Lumen, can you go to the office and get me some chalk, please? So I went. I knew Mr. Blackbeard because my mother taught him. My brother was a hero 10 years before me. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. He was a magnificent pianist, organist, drama guy. I think baseball, sport. Never mind. And I knocked at the door and Blackbeard said, yes, typical black suit, straight face, sitting behind his desk, walk in there, he takes his glasses off. Yes, what is it, Lumen? I said, sir, sorry to disturb you, Mrs. So-and-so sent me. That's all I said. Close the door. Huh? Close the door. Close the door. Right, bend over. Yeah. What, sir? What, me boy? Bend over. 3 cuts and all. But sir, Lumen, you're not listening to me. I said, sir, please. So I was asked to come to you for chalk by the lady saw backside. And he said, well, why didn't you say so, boy? So he gave me the chalk, and I looked at him, and he said, you've got 3 credits. And off I went. Well, I'm still waiting for those credits today. Never mind. Right, on a more serious note, I'm sure that many of us that happened to over the years. It's a son's story. And I'm not going to read it out.
A son's story. Hey Dad, I love you so much. As a 21-year-old, we still find ways to make my day. I love every minute of conversation that we have, and I cherish the nuggets of wisdom that you generously give. It is hard for me to put myself in your shoes when you were my age. You were in an incredibly difficult season and extremely afraid. You had a certain reputation, you had friends, you had family, and you probably felt like you disappointed everybody. I bet you felt alone. I know I would have. I don't know if I've ever officially thanked you for choosing life amid an unplanned pregnancy, and for that, I'm sorry. Dad, thank you so much for standing up and willingly fighting for your family. Thank you for choosing to see past the circumstantial pain and fear and see that there was a love on the other end of your decision. Thank you for sticking by Mom's side and marrying her. Thank you for fighting for your family ever since and being a clear representation of the agape love of God.
And yeah, so there you go. That's quite a touching story. So moving on, oh, sorry, too fast. So what is your story, guys? We're coming to the end now. Your story inspires hope, anchors communities, and moves generations. The world is honored to hear it. Thank you for your time today. I know the English, some of the English people have heard this before. I wish you all well as you impact daily on our young men. And thank you for what you are doing. Believe me, you are making an impact that for some of them, they will remember you for years to come. And you think of those reunions and catching up with some of them you don't want to see actually. But it's quite amazing, this will be the last thing that I say, is boys who were little so-and-sos at school, big so-and-sos at school, and very difficult with lots of punishments and all those sorts of things, right? And you go to functions in my previous schools, and here even, and they come up to you and they say, you know, sir, and this is true story. We didn't agree with you. I said, I know that. We had a few discussions over the years, but we actually see what you were trying to do and why it's impacting now and the benefits of it. And that's happened on more than one occasion. So you do make an impact on those boys. Sometimes they don't always see it when they're teenagers, but as they grow older, maybe they do. So continue being brave and courageous, and thank you very much for all that you do for our boys. Thank you.